Good morning and welcome Year 4 to your Monday reading comprehension slides. Today we are going to be looking at answering and understanding vocabulary questions. So take a look at what we're doing today, because we're going to be understanding what these questions are before we explore how to answer this type of question, trying some examples before we read through a text and a set of retrieval. That should be vocabulary. It's vocabulary questions what we're looking at today, because of course we are looking at our good old friend Vocabulary Victor. So what do you know about this question type? Pause the video, come back to me in a few moments as well. So think of those ideas, pause, see you in a moment. Right, so Vocabulary Victor. Now he's there to remind you to think of the meaning of certain words. Now these types of questions require you to put words into context, and that's by exploring the text around the word to help give it some meaning. So you might get questions such as this when you're dealing with a question that's a vocabulary one, such as, what does this word tell us about the character, the atmosphere or the setting? Look at the phrase or the sentence in the passage and circle a word or phrase, that means the same as, which word or phrase gives the impression, and so far and so forth. So have a look for those questions if you're not sure, because today we're going to be answering a few of our own. So let's quickly go through how we should go about answering these types of questions. So, as mentioned, vocabulary questions are all about finding a word and understanding its meaning using text around it as a context. You've got to find that word and then locate where it is and understand what's around it. So, let's have a little read through this text. After weeks of preparation, the time had come for Mr. Ball to showcase his culinary skills. His recipe had been tried and tested many times, and he felt confident that the judges would be salivating at the sight of his delicious, delightful, divine cakes. However, when tasting the cakes, the judges almost threw up. They were unimpressed and described the cake as inadequate. So that's the text. The question is, what word suggests that Mr. Ball had practiced his recipe before? So to understand this question, or help us answer it, we need to go through and do a few things. First thing is understanding what the question's asked of us. Second, we need to identify what you think is the key information, or word within that text. We're going to read around that word to give context to it and then check to see if it answers our question. So our first step, understand what the question's asked. What word suggests Mr. Ball's practiced recipe before? Well, we know that we are looking for a specific word because it says right here that we are looking for a word. So that's the first thing that we know. We know the word is relating to something that I have done. And we're knowing the word is similar to practice. So we've got those 3 bits of information. From that, we can then identify what we think the key word of information is. So read around the word to give context. So I think that maybe preparation's that word. After weeks of preparation, in my mind, it links to practice. But I'm going to read around it to make sure that it makes sense. After weeks of preparation, the time had come for Mr. Ball to showcase his culinary skills. Does that answer the question? The context make you think that maybe it's to do preparation, or the idea of practice, It does. So that answers your question. So don't just find the first word you go for. In this case, it is one of the first words, but by reading around the text a few sentences before and a few sentences afterwards, you'll understand what we're looking for. So it does answer the question in that context. Let's try another one. What do you think the word culinary means, okay? So let's start by understanding what the question's asked. So to look for the word culinary and state what it means. So remember, we've got to use the text around it to give us that context. So there's the word culinary, okay? So I've identified what the key word information is. Of course, that's culinary. I'm now reading around the word to give context to it. I know that this first paragraph, or this first sentence, is all to do with your preparation and practicing. So I'm just going to go on and read from here. His recipe had been tried and tested many times, and he felt confident the judges would be salivating at the sight of his delicious, delightful, divine cake. So it's giving me an idea that the words recipe and cake suggest that Mr. Ball's skills are in a particular set, and hopefully you can deduce that to say it's to do with cooking and baking. And if you're making a cake, of course you're baking. Recipe is to do with that process of baking. It's there, so that would be your answer. It makes sense in relation to the question that we're asking. So some vocabulary questions may seem easier but require the same steps. Which word tells us the cake was bad? Now you might be thinking, right, easy peasy, I've got to find the word. But again, you can't just locate any old word, because some of you might go, oh yeah, the word's recipe. Look, you've identified, but read around that word to give context to it. Okay, it doesn't say anything about being bad there. So you have to then check and see sorry, if it answers the question. Well, we know it doesn't because the context isn't there. So it's really, really important that you look for that word carefully and make sure it goes to the context. Hopefully, you'll see it's that word there, inadequate. They were unimpressed and described the cake as inadequate. If someone's unimpressed, something is not going to be good. So you've got to read around and look for the right context. So, I want you now to pause the video, read through this text and have a go at these questions. I'll see you in a moment. Right, welcome back. There are your answers to our little Victor vocabulary task there. So, here is our main task today. All of you have got a text and set of questions to go through, all linked to those vocabulary questions today. You need to either read through the warm, hot or spicy text before attempting the questions for the same level. Good luck and we'll see you tomorrow.